I never thought my own blood would be the one to destroy the most important day of my life. But as I stood there in my childhood bedroom, staring at the shredded remains of what was supposed to be my wedding dress, I realized that sometimes the people closest to you are capable of the deepest betrayals. It was supposed to be perfect. After 2 years of planning, every detail of my wedding to Brian had been meticulously arranged. The venue was booked, the flowers ordered, the cake designed to perfection. I had spent months choosing that dress, a vintage-inspired gown with delicate lace sleeves and pearl buttons that my grandmother would have loved. But now it lay in tatters on my bedroom floor, slashed beyond repair. My hands trembled as I picked up the torn fabric, trying to understand what had happened. The security of our family home had been compromised, but there were no signs of forced entry. Someone with access had done this. Someone who knew exactly where to find me at my most vulnerable moment, just hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle. "Holly, honey, the caterers are on the phone," my mother called from downstairs, her voice strained. "They're saying the wedding reception has been cancelled. They claim you called them this morning and terminated the contract." My blood ran cold. I hadn't called anyone. I had been in the salon since dawn, getting my hair and makeup done for what should have been the happiest day of my life. Racing downstairs, I grabbed the phone from my mother's hands. "There must be some mistake," I told the caterer, my voice cracking with desperation. "I never cancelled anything. This is my wedding day." "Mom, we have a recorded call from this morning at 6:30 a.m. The caller identified herself as Holly Martinez and provided all the correct verification information, including your social security number and the booking reference. She was very specific about wanting to cancel due to the groom's infidelity. The words hit me like a physical blow. Infidelity? Brian and I had our problems, but cheating wasn't one of them. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my wedding, and they had inside information that only family members would know. Before I could process this fully, my phone buzzed with a text from Brian. "We need to talk. Meet me at the church, now." The 20-minute drive to the church felt like an eternity. My mind raced through possibilities, but deep down, a terrible suspicion was beginning to form. Only one person had access to all my personal information, knew my social security number, and had been acting strangely quiet about my wedding preparations for weeks. I found Brian pacing in the church parking lot, his face a mask of confusion and hurt. In his hand was his phone, displaying what appeared to be a series of intimate text messages between me and my ex-boyfriend Marcus from college. "Brian, those aren't real," I said immediately, but even as the words left my mouth, I could see he didn't believe me. "Someone is trying to sabotage our wedding. These came from your number, Holly. The timestamps show they were sent last week while I was out of town for my bachelor party." His voice was flat, emotionless. "How do you explain texting Marcus about missing him and wanting to finish what we started?" I stared at the messages in horror. They were sophisticated fabrications, but they looked completely authentic. Someone had not only accessed my personal information, but had also managed to spoof my phone number or somehow send messages from my account. "Brian, please, you know me. You know I would never do this. Someone is trying to destroy us." I reached for his hands, but he pulled away. "I thought I knew you," he said quietly. "But between these messages and you cancelling our reception this morning, I don't know what to believe anymore. I didn't cancel anything. My dress was destroyed, the caterers were called by someone pretending to be me, and now these fake messages. Can't you see this is all connected? Someone wants to stop our wedding." But Brian was already shaking his head, his jaw set with finality. "I can't do this, Holly. I can't marry someone I don't trust. The wedding is off." I watched helplessly as the man I loved walked away from me, leaving me standing alone in my ruined makeup and emergency dress I had borrowed from my cousin. The wedding guests were already arriving, expecting a celebration, but instead, they would witness the most humiliating moment of my life. The aftermath was even worse than the initial shock. Within hours, someone had leaked a twisted version of the story to social media, painting me as a cheating bride who had destroyed her own wedding in guilt. The narrative spread like wildfire through our small town, with embellished details that made me sound unstable and vindictive. My mother spent the day fielding calls from relatives and friends, her voice growing more strained with each conversation. "I don't understand how this happened," she kept saying, but I noticed she never quite looked me in the eye when she said it. That evening, as I sat in my childhood bedroom surrounded by wedding gifts that would need to be returned, I received a knock on my door. It was my sister Samantha, carrying a cup of tea and wearing an expression of practiced sympathy. "I'm so sorry this happened, Holly," she said, setting the cup on my nightstand. "But maybe it's for the best. You and Brian always seemed like you were trying too hard to make it work." Something in her tone made me look up sharply. There was a smugness hiding behind her concerned facade, a satisfaction that she couldn't quite conceal. "Samantha, where were you this morning between 6 and 7? "Sleeping, of course. Why?" But her answer came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Because someone called the caterers at 6:30 a.m. and cancelled my reception using my personal information. Information that only family members would have." Samantha's expression flickered for just a moment, but it was enough. In that instant, I saw guilt flash across her face before she quickly composed herself. "Are you seriously accusing me of sabotaging your wedding? Holly, you're clearly in shock. You should get some rest." But I was finally seeing clearly for the first time all day. Samantha had always been jealous of my relationship with Brian. She had made snide comments about our engagement, questioned whether I was settling for him, and had been notably absent from most of the wedding planning activities. I had attributed it to her own relationship problems, but now I realized it was something much more sinister. "How did you get my social security number?" "I don't know what you're talking about." But she was already backing toward the door, her face pale. "You used to do Mum's taxes with her every year. You would have seen all our family's personal information. And you've been in and out of my apartment enough times to know my passwords, to see my phone lying around unlocked. You're being paranoid, Holly. This is grief talking. Get out." My voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my room and stay away from me." Samantha left without another word, but the damage was done. Everything finally made sense. The timing, the inside knowledge, the sophisticated nature of the sabotage. My own sister had destroyed my wedding day, and she had done it so thoroughly that rebuilding would seem impossible. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. I couldn't bring myself to leave the house, couldn't face the pitying looks and whispered conversations that followed me everywhere in our small town. Brian wouldn't return my calls, and even when mutual friends tried to intercede on my behalf, he remained convinced that I had betrayed him. But slowly, anger began to replace my grief. I had always been a fighter, and I refused to let Samantha's cruelty define the rest of my life. If she thought she had destroyed me, she was about to learn how wrong she was. I started by documenting everything I could remember about the sabotage. I requested phone records, gathered evidence of the fake text messages, and began reaching out to digital forensics experts who might be able to trace the source of the spoofed communications. It was expensive work that I couldn't really afford, but I was determined to prove my innocence and expose Samantha's guilt. 3 months after my ruined wedding, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. Using the money I had saved for my honeymoon, I started a business called Secure Celebrations, a wedding planning service that specialized in protecting events from sabotage and interference. The irony wasn't lost on me. My own destroyed wedding had taught me exactly what vulnerabilities to look for and how to prevent them. I knew how to set up secure communication channels, how to verify the identity of anyone making changes to vendor contracts, and how to spot the warning signs of family interference. My first client was a bride whose future mother-in-law had been making threatening comments about the wedding. Within weeks, I had helped her implement security measures that prevented 3 separate sabotage attempts, including an effort to cancel the flowers and an attempt to send fake postponement notices to the wedding guests. Word spread quickly in our tight-knit community, and soon I was booking clients from neighboring towns. Apparently, wedding sabotage was more common than anyone wanted to admit, and my unique expertise was in high demand. The success of my business was satisfying, But it didn't heal the hole in my heart left by Brian's absence. When he finally reached out 6 months after our failed wedding day, I almost didn't take his call. "Holly, I've been thinking about everything that happened." His voice was hesitant, uncertain. "Some things haven't added up, and I'm starting to wonder if I made a mistake." "You made more than a mistake, Brian. You abandoned me when I needed you most." "I know, and I'm sorry. But those text messages seemed so real, and with the cancelled reception, I didn't know what to think." "You could have trusted me. You could have fought for us instead of running away at the first sign of trouble." There was a long pause. "Can we meet? Can I try to explain?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not the same person you left at that altar. I've built a new life, and I don't have room in it for someone who doesn't trust me." I hung up feeling empowered rather than sad. The old Holly might have taken Brian back out of loneliness, but the new Holly had learned her worth. Meanwhile, Samantha had been notably quiet since the wedding disaster. She avoided family gatherings and seemed to be keeping a low profile around town. I wondered if she felt guilty about what she had done, but I wasn't ready to forgive her, even if she had developed a conscience. That changed when my mother called me in a state of excitement 9 months after my ruined wedding. "Holly, you'll never guess. Samantha is engaged. She's getting married to Tyler Morrison. You remember him from college? They've been secretly dating for months, and he proposed last weekend." My blood ran cold. Tyler Morrison had been my friend Jessica's ex-boyfriend, and their breakup had been ugly and painful. Jessica had confided in me that Tyler had suddenly turned cold and distant, breaking up with her via text after 2 years together. She had been devastated, especially because Tyler had immediately started dating someone else. Now I realized that someone else had been Samantha, and I was beginning to see a pattern of behavior that extended far beyond my own ruined wedding. "When is the wedding?" I asked carefully. 3 months from now, and Holly, she wants you to be her maid of honor. She says she knows things have been strained between you two, but family is family." The audacity was breathtaking. After destroying my wedding, Samantha wanted me to stand beside her at her own. But as I thought about it, I realized this might be exactly the opportunity I had been waiting for. "Tell her I'd be honored," I said. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into investigating Tyler's background and his relationship with Samantha. What I discovered was disturbing, but not surprising. Tyler ran a small marketing company, and according to public records and social media posts, I was able to piece together Samantha had been working there as a consultant for almost a year, well before my wedding. More damning, I found evidence that Samantha had been embezzling money from Tyler's company. Small amounts at first, but growing bolder over time. She had been using her access to his business accounts to transfer funds to personal accounts, then covering her tracks by manipulating the bookkeeping software. I also reached out to Jessica, who was happy to share her story about Tyler's sudden personality change. According to her, Tyler had become suspicious and jealous seemingly overnight, accusing her of flirting with other men and questioning her whereabouts constantly. Their relationship had become toxic within weeks, leading to their eventual breakup. The pattern was becoming clear. Samantha had targeted Tyler while he was in a relationship with Jessica, then systematically undermined that relationship until she could swoop in as the supportive alternative. She had done the same thing to me, except instead of stealing my boyfriend, she had destroyed my wedding to eliminate what she saw as my happiness and success. I began reaching out to other people in Samantha's past, looking for more evidence of manipulative behavior. What I found was a trail of damaged relationships and betrayed friendships going back to high school. Samantha had always been jealous of other people's success, but I was beginning to understand that she had made a career out of sabotaging the people closest to her. Armed with this information, I began planning my response. If Samantha wanted me at her wedding, I would be there. But I wouldn't be there as her supportive sister. The morning of Samantha's wedding, I woke up early and spent extra time on my appearance. I wanted to look confident and successful when I delivered what I had come to think of as my closing argument. I had spent weeks preparing my evidence, organizing it into a presentation that would be impossible to deny or dismiss. Screenshots of bank transfers, testimony from Jessica and other victims of Samantha's manipulation, and most importantly, the digital forensics report that finally proved Samantha had been the one to send those fake text messages using spoofing software she had installed on my phone during one of her visits. The wedding venue was beautiful. Samantha had spared no expense in creating her perfect day. As I stood with the other bridesmaids, watching guests file into the church, I felt a strange sense of calm. Justice had been a long time coming, but it was finally at hand. Tyler looked nervous at the altar, which wasn't surprising given what I now knew about his financial situation. Samantha's embezzlement had left his company nearly bankrupt, though he hadn't discovered the extent of the damage yet. When it came time for the maid of honor speech, I stood up with a smile, holding my phone and a small stack of printed papers. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate Samantha and Tyler," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the reception hall. "Family bonds are so important, aren't they? They're the relationships we trust most, the people we believe will always have our backs." I paused, letting my gaze find Samantha's face. She was smiling, completely unsuspecting of what was about to happen. A year ago, Samantha helped me learn an important lesson about trust. You see, my wedding was sabotaged by someone very close to me. Someone who used my personal information to cancel my vendors, who destroyed my wedding dress, and who sent fake text messages to my fiancé to convince him I was cheating. The room had gone completely silent. I could see confusion spreading across the faces of the guests as they tried to understand where this speech was heading. For months, I couldn't prove who had done this to me. But recently, I hired a digital forensics expert who was able to trace those fake messages back to their source. I held up my phone, which was connected to the venue's audio-visual system. "I'd like to share some evidence with all of you." The screen behind me lit up with screenshots of bank transfers from Tyler's company account to Samantha's personal accounts. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the amounts and dates became clear. "Tyler, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but your fiancé has been embezzling from your company for over a year. But that's not all." I clicked to the next slide, which showed the forensics report conclusively linking the fake text messages to software installed on my phone. Samantha destroyed my wedding because she couldn't stand to see me happy. She's made a career out of sabotaging the people closest to her, and now she's done the same thing to you, Tyler. Samantha was on her feet now, her face white with rage and panic. "Holly, you're lying. This is all fake." "Is it?" I turned to address Tyler directly. "Check your company accounts. Check your bookkeeping software. Check the testimony from your ex-girlfriend Jessica, who's here tonight and can tell you exactly how Samantha manipulated your previous relationship." Tyler's face had gone ashen as he stared at the evidence on the screen. "Samantha, is this true?" But Samantha was already backing away from the altar, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. "Tyler, don't listen to her. She's just jealous because I found happiness, and she couldn't." "Jealous?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not jealous, Samantha. I'm successful. While you were busy destroying other people's lives, I built a business helping brides protect themselves from people exactly like you. I'm booked solid for the next 2 years, and I'm happier than I've ever been." Tyler was studying the financial records on his phone now, his face growing darker with each screen. "Samantha, there's $30,000 missing from the business account. How do you explain this?" But Samantha had no explanation. Instead, she turned and ran from the altar, her wedding dress trailing behind her as she fled through the church doors. The reception hall erupted in chaos as guests tried to process what they had just witnessed. Tyler stood at the altar, still in his tuxedo, staring at the evidence of his fiancée's betrayal. I approached him carefully. "Tyler, I'm sorry this had to happen on what should have been your wedding day, but you deserve to know the truth." He nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on his phone. "Thank you. I can't believe I almost married someone who could do this." My mother appeared at my side, tears in her eyes. "Holly, I owe you an apology. I should have believed you from the beginning. I should have supported you instead of letting everyone think you were unstable. It's okay, Mom. I understand why it was hard to believe. Samantha is very good at manipulation. No, it's not okay. You're my daughter, and I failed you when you needed me most. I hugged her tightly, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Having my mother's support and belief meant more to me than any public vindication. In the weeks that followed, word of what had happened at Samantha's wedding spread throughout our community. Far from damaging my reputation, the exposure of the truth actually enhanced it. My business flourished as more and more brides sought out my protective services, and I found myself becoming something of a local celebrity. Samantha disappeared from town shortly after her wedding disaster. I heard through family connections that she had entered therapy and was trying to address her destructive behaviors. But I felt no obligation to reach out to her or offer forgiveness. My life had moved forward, and I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. I had a successful business, a strong relationship with my mother, and a sense of purpose that went beyond my own personal satisfaction. That's why I was surprised when Brian showed up at my office 6 months later. Holly, I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I need to apologize properly. And I need to tell you something important. I looked up from my desk, where I had been reviewing contracts for an upcoming wedding. Brian looked older, more serious than I remembered. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. What could you possibly have to tell me that would matter now? I know what Samantha did. I know all of it. And I know that I was a coward for not believing you, not fighting for you when it mattered. Brian, we've had this conversation. I told you I'm not interested in relitigating the past. I'm not here to ask for another chance, he said quickly. I'm here because I realize I never gave you the apology you deserved. You were innocent, you were being attacked by your own family, and instead of protecting you, I abandoned you. There's no excuse for that. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives, but all I saw was genuine remorse. I accept your apology, I said finally, but that doesn't change anything between us. I know. I just needed you to know that I understand now. What you've built, what you've accomplished since then, it's incredible. You didn't just survive what happened to you, you turned it into something powerful. Despite myself, I felt touched by his words. Thank you. That means something, coming from you. We talked for another hour, and for the first time since our broken wedding day, I felt like I was talking to the Brian I had fallen in love with. But I also realized that the woman who had loved him was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more self-reliant. When he finally asked if there was any possibility of us trying again, I was able to say no without any lingering regret. I wish you the best, Brian, I really do, but I'm not the same person you fell in love with, and honestly, neither are you. We're different people now, and that's okay. He nodded, accepting my decision with more grace than he had shown during our original crisis. You're right, but Holly, I hope someday you find someone who deserves the person you've become. After he left, I sat in my office reflecting on how far I had come. 2 years ago, I had been a broken woman whose life had been destroyed by betrayal. Now I was a successful businesswoman who had turned her trauma into triumph. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. My mother knocked on my apartment door, carrying a small wrapped package. This came in the mail today, she said. It's addressed to you from Samantha. I took the package hesitantly. Inside was a letter and a small jewelry box. The letter was handwritten, several pages long, and as I read it, I was surprised by its tone of genuine remorse. Holly, it began, I know there's nothing I can say to undo the damage I've caused, but I need you to know that I'm in therapy now, working to understand why I've spent my life hurting the people I should have loved most. My therapist says I have something called narcissistic personality disorder, which isn't an excuse but might help explain my behavior. I've destroyed so many relationships, caused so much pain, and I'm finally ready to take responsibility for that. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see now how strong and resilient you are. You didn't just survive what I did to you, you thrived. I'm proud to be your sister, even though I know I don't deserve to be. The enclosed bracelet was our grandmother's. I think she would have wanted you to have it, since you're the one who has truly honored her memory by building something beautiful from something broken. Inside the jewelry box was a delicate charm bracelet that I remembered our grandmother wearing. Each charm represented a different milestone in her life: her wedding, the births of her children, special anniversaries and achievements. I held the bracelet up to the light, thinking about the woman who had worn it and the granddaughter who had chosen to send it to me now. It didn't erase what Samantha had done, but it was a gesture toward healing that I hadn't expected. A few weeks later, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called the therapist whose contact information Samantha had included in her letter and arranged for a family session. I want to be clear, I told Dr. Martinez during our initial phone conversation. I'm not ready to forgive, and I may never be, but I'm willing to participate in Samantha's healing process if it might help her stop hurting other people. The session was difficult, but productive. Samantha cried, "I spoke my truth," and our mother finally acknowledged the role she had played in enabling Samantha's behavior by always making excuses for her. "I see now that I failed both of my daughters," Mom said through her tears. "I failed Holly by not protecting her, and I failed Samantha by not holding her accountable." It wasn't a magic cure, but it was a beginning. Samantha would continue her therapy. I would continue building my business and my new life. And maybe someday we could find a way to be sisters again. But the biggest surprise came 3 months later when Brian appeared at my office door once again. This time, he was carrying flowers and wearing an expression I had never seen before: humble hope mixed with determined resolve. "Holly, I know you said no before, and I respect that. But I've spent the last year in therapy too, working on myself, trying to understand why I was so quick to doubt you and so slow to fight for us. Brian, we've been through this. Just hear me out, please. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I also know that what we had was real and worth fighting for. I should have fought for it then, and I'm fighting for it now." He got down on one knee right there in my office, pulling out a ring that was nothing like the one he had originally proposed with. This one was simpler, more elegant, and somehow more suited to the woman I had become. "I'm not asking you to go back to who we were. I'm asking if you'll let me get to know who you are now and see if we can build something new together. Something stronger." I stared at him for a long moment, processing the sincerity in his voice and the changes I could see in his face. The Brian who had proposed to me 3 years ago would never have had the courage to admit his failures so completely or to ask for forgiveness so humbly. "If I say yes," I said slowly, "it has to be on my terms. No big wedding, no family drama, no complicated plans that can be sabotaged. If we do this, we elope, we go somewhere quiet and private, and we get married without anyone else having the opportunity to interfere." His face broke into a smile that reached his eyes. "I would marry you in a courthouse tomorrow if that's what you wanted. And you have to understand that I'm not the same person you fell in love with before. I'm stronger now, more independent. I won't be the kind of wife who puts her husband's needs before her own, or who sacrifices her dreams for someone else's comfort. I wouldn't want you to be. The woman you've become is incredible, Holly. I fell in love with you once, but I'm in awe of who you are now." I looked down at the ring, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the long climb back to happiness and success. Samantha's sabotage had been meant to destroy me, but instead it had forged me into someone stronger than I had ever imagined I could be. "Yes," I said finally, "but we're doing this my way." 6 months later, Brian and I were married in a small ceremony on a beach in Costa Rica, with only a handful of close friends as witnesses. There were no family members present to cause drama, no elaborate plans that could be sabotaged, no opportunities for interference or manipulation. As I stood on the sand in my simple white dress, holding hands with the man who had learned to fight for love instead of running from complications, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The old Holly would never have had the strength to demand respect or the confidence to build a business from her trauma. My phone buzzed with a text message during the reception. It was from Samantha. I saw the photos on Mum's Facebook. You look beautiful and happy. I'm genuinely glad you found your way back to love. I showed the message to Brian, who had learned about the full extent of his sister-in-law's betrayal during our reconciliation process. Are you going to respond? He asked. I thought about it for a moment, then typed back, Thank you. I hope you're finding peace too. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was an acknowledgement that we were both different people now, shaped by the consequences of our choices and the work we had done to heal. As the sun set over the Pacific Ocean and I danced with my husband on the beach where we had just promised to love and trust each other, I realized that sometimes the best revenge really is living well. Samantha had tried to destroy my happiness, but instead she had taught me how strong I could be. I had built a successful business from the ashes of my ruined wedding. I had learned to value myself enough to demand genuine love and respect. I had found the courage to set boundaries with toxic family members while still leaving room for redemption and growth. Most importantly, I had discovered that my worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or validation. The woman who had been devastated by her sister's betrayal was gone, replaced by someone who could face challenges with confidence and grace. The business I had built would continue to help other brides protect their special days from sabotage and interference. My marriage to Brian would be stronger because we had both learned hard lessons about trust, communication, and fighting for love. And someday, maybe Samantha and I would find our way back to being sisters. But if we didn't, that would be okay too. I had learned that you can't control other people's choices, but you can always control your response to them. As Brian spun me around on our makeshift dance floor, I caught sight of my grandmother's charm bracelet on my wrist. Each charm told the story of a life well lived, of challenges overcome, and joy found in unexpected places. I smiled, thinking about the charms I would add to represent my own journey. A small wedding dress for the day that was destroyed, a tiny building for the business I had built from heartbreak, and perhaps a simple heart for the love I had found by refusing to settle for less than I deserved. The waves crashed against the shore as the stars came out overhead, and I knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, I was ready to face them. I had learned that resilience isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about refusing to let hardship define you. Samantha had tried to write the ending to my story, but instead, she had given me the strength to write it myself.